Welcome to Fit Chat, Chit Chat. I'm your hostess, Devondre Sanchez, also known as the Fit Therapist, licensed and manager family therapist, founder, owner, and client of Finding Inner Transformation, where we believe a fit mindset is more than the physical, but it is mental, emotional, and most importantly, is spiritual. It is whole person care. So thank you for those that will be joining me live. I want you to leave your comments, your feedback, and your questions in the chat. And those who are watching this in the recording, please feel free to do so. Feedback, questions, I'll answer them at any time. So thank you for joining in. So I was on my run today, and it just came over me that, it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And oftentimes during this time, we focus a lot on the client, the patient, or the consumer of mental health. And that is very important. And if you watch my Fit Chat lastly, I had some clinicians on who talked about all about clients and patients and consumers of mental health. And so we do not want to disregard that. At the same time, I want to clarify a few things that I believe is helpful for those who are considering mental health counseling, those who are in mental health counseling, about therapists and what we could be going through, because not all fit in this box, but I would be safe to say a good portion of therapists have these encounters. So I'm going to keep this one quick. Again, I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and have been in the mental health field for over 21 years. So this is something that I have seen, I have experienced. So this is not just what I've heard. This is experiential. So number one, therapists see therapist. Imagine that. Just as doctors see doctors. Last I've checked, unless you're on Gilligan's Island, there is not one doctor performing his own surgery. So nor should we think that therapists will not seek therapy. And actually, it is mandated for most degrees in order to complete them that we receive 25 hours of therapy. So with that being said, therapists see therapists. And I would go ahead and safely say that we see therapists outside of that 25-hour window. For those who are in California, that is our regulation, that we have 25 hours of personal therapy, because we need to know what it's like to be the client. But with that being said, one of the reasons why we don't openly tell you that we see therapists, for a couple reasons. Number one, we are sworn by the little G gods called the Board of Behavioral Sciences, or whatever it is in your area, that we have an ethical and legal mandate to withhold certain information. Again, there's a couple reasons why a therapist will not mention it. Number one, because of, is it ethical? Is it appropriate? We definitely need to take that in consideration. Why are we telling our client or patient or consumer we're in therapy? Another reason, maybe they believe that it loses credibility with the client. Well, if you're seeing a therapist, what would make me want to open up to you if you don't have your stuff together? I can pick that apart for several reasons, but I would say more importantly, it truly is about why we are mentioning that. What helpful information could we be giving to our client and why we would expose that? Another thing may be pride. Some therapists may want you to think they have it all together. I'm very open and transparent about a few things, and I can be on here because I'm not talking to a client and say I do not have it all together. Another reason, and the best answer, is we don't want to make the session about us. This is not our therapy. And actually, I think it makes you a better therapist if you've been through therapy, are going through therapy, or considering therapy. We should be great practitioners about what we preach. So, and then the other thing is, we may be dealing with a client or a consumer, a patient that may have some codependency issues, and we have to be mindful about what is best practice and best for our client. At that time, we work for you. So that's number one, therapists see therapists. Number two, they, clinicians, we, me, have a history of trauma ourselves. Imagine that, back to we are not Perfect. And why wouldn't there be a level of consideration about trauma as it pertains to your therapist when 70% of people will have at least one traumatic event once in their life? That does not mean that we have PTSD. There's a difference, just as it doesn't mean that you have PTSD just because you've had a traumatic event in your life. So consider that. 70% will have at least one traumatic event. I think it's 6 out of 10 men, somewhere around 60%, 5 out of 10, depending on where you go to look for stats. However, we can safely say over half of the people, to include therapists, have a history with trauma. Only about 20% of those folks will actually have PTSD. So your therapist could have trauma. And if you look at the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study, and question, you would probably see that quite a few of those can be marked off, especially when you think about clinicians of color. So that's number 2. Number 3, school doesn't prepare us necessarily for everything that walks in the door. And when I say everything, I'm talking about problem or the issue. School is about gaining information, getting knowledge, and getting a very general and broad understanding about diagnoses and about certain populations. But I promise you, a good clinician will tell you that you are the expert about your life. Therapy is an experiential process. So yes, there is some knowledge, there's some understanding. However, I cannot generalize and say all clients are the same. At least I don't. So it is very, very wise for us to come in and be coaches and guidance and motivators and awareness supporters, because we have never seen you in our office before if you are a new client. So therapy is this experiential process that we combine with the knowledge and the expertise, of course. But if it is not within our competence, we should not be working with you. For instance, if a client, patient, or consumer comes in and they have eating disorder history or background, or currently suffering or dealing with that problem, and you are not competent as a therapist, and yes, you may have some general idea, but if that is not your expertise, then you should make the appropriate referral. Most therapists know how to do that. Same as with substance abuse, same as with any type of physical problems that enter our door. So that is number 3. School does not always, or didn't, prepare us for every problem that walks in the door. And I can tell you, being in mental health 21 years, working inpatient mental health, school-based, government, college, and having a lot of different experiences, I will say there is not one that has been the same. And nor did I read about it in a book. However, it is in the knowledge and the experience, it is in the education and information that you continuously get training. You seek out your own support through consultation or supervision, depending on where you are at as the therapist in your career. That was number 3. Number 4, we are doing our best, more times than you can probably think, to not allow countertransference to enter into the space. And I will safely tell you that I not heard this before. I don't remember where I heard it, but it said something along the lines, there's constant countertransference. Your job as a therapist is to regulate it, to make sure it does not disrupt the therapeutic process. So countertransference is this kind of exchange of emotions that the therapist may have onto the client. Now, I will tell you this too. There is transference often where a client is putting the therapist in the realm or the role or the space of another relationship. So that could be their wife, their mother, their friend, their whatever. Okay. So just know that some of that is fairly normal. Okay. However, it doesn't mean, this is where it gets tricky, is our job is to guide and to help you process and become aware and identify that relationship triangle or that relationship bridge that may be keeping you from getting to the next level, okay, to the next level of healing. So countertransfer is not necessarily a negative thing unless you as the therapist become very emotional. As you know, that you are now starting to um, look at this client and you keep seeing your boyfriend or a past relationship or your mom or your dad. That could be very disruptive to the therapeutic realm. And it happens more than people think. And it could look like the therapist having feelings, intimacy, romantic, sexual feelings for the client. It can mean they get angry or they don't like working with that client or they're constantly judging them. So we got to make sure that we have boundaries. And if those boundaries get crossed, then we know we are operating unethically and probably illegally, especially if it comes to sexual advances onto the client. However, you would be surprised at how often it happens. And so this is where we as therapists should seek supervision if you're an associate / intern or practicum student. And for licensed therapists, consultation or your own therapy, or you need to make the proper referral out. But I'm here to tell you that therapists have crossed the line. Yes, they have. And they have gotten into some serious situations with clients because of countertransference. Let me just say, unregulated countertransference. And then I'm going to throw you in one more. I know I said I was bringing up 4, and hopefully so far you have gotten it. And let me get to my little list here. So number 1 is therapist see therapist. We are imperfect people. Number 2, they, we, me could have a history with trauma, more likely. That is why we probably entered the field. We say this often, and it was brought up in my last Fit Chat on mental health awareness about, the therapist, the mental health field chose us, or why we picked this degree or went into this field. And I believe that to be true. We are all looking to heal. That includes your therapist. And so that was number 2, history of trauma. Or for some therapists, we won't just stay there, but it could be depression or anxiety. I can remember working in the field where there was folks, psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists who took medication themselves, who were dealing with bipolar or depression. It does not make you unfit to be a therapist. Actually, it should create a space of empathy, of course, as long as it's managed. Number 3, school didn't prepare us for every issue that enters into the therapy room. There's no way. Therapy is an experiential process. We need to be observing. We need to be looking. We need to be in attachment in the process. And if you are a first-time client, there's no way that we know you or know how to work through your problem until you sit into the space. And we talked about countertransference. It needs to be regulated. Some clinicians want to be your friend. Maybe you're cool. Maybe you're likable. Maybe you remind them of their granny. I don't know. But I also know that countertransference is real and it's good to be aware of it. Actually, a good, healthy boundary for a therapist is that they recognize when they want to hang out with you, and that's not okay. That's actually a great thing. So countertransference is not always bad or negative as long as it's regulated and it doesn't cross boundaries. So believe it or not, sometimes your therapist wants to hang out with you, but they just can't. Sometimes you remind them of something or someone, and they just cannot do that. So as long as it's regulated, it's okay. As long as they see consultation, it's okay. And we talked about school not preparing us for everything. And then one last one that I want to bring up, and I'm going to end, is your therapist knows that you're already healed more times than not. It is our job to guide you, to allow you to identify, give you space to be able to process that. And I thought about it. Well, if they're already healed, why are they coming? Just don't know it. There's just some parts of our thinking that makes us think that we're not. So what's interesting is the body and wounds and scars. And this is from a lady at my church that so beautifully, if it's a scab or scar, that means that there's already healing involved. But because we can see it, and this is me adding, because you can see it, you're focused on it. Because trauma has happened in your life, you're focused on it. And yes, we've created some narratives around that can keep it swirling around, but it is our job to assist you and guide you and coach you through that process to understand that that is already a healing space for you. We just got to help you and guide you to get you there. The body is self-regulating, is self-healing. It's the way we were created. So if something happened 20 years ago and that still bothers you, more times than not, you're still looking at that scar as an open wound. Thank you, Minister Audrey, for bringing clarity to that. So we just need to help you to find new ways to create more helpful, more kinder, and factual thoughts. So I hope this was helpful. As a full licensed marriage and family therapist working in the mental health field for 21 years, this has been my experience. This is encounters that I have and many of my therapist friends have had or shared. However, I can tell you that we are people too. And so sometimes we think because certain people are in certain professions, they don't have problems or they just know how to get through those problems. I think it is a little bit of an advantage, kind of like being a teacher may have a little bit of advantage to teaching or schooling your children a little bit more effectively than those who did not go through the proper or formal education. However, when we're talking about the human emotions and feelings and the heart and the mind, none of us are out of the realm of being touched by it, touched by needing to go to therapy or having some unregulated or dysregulated feelings. So with that being said, next time you see a therapist and next time we are talking about mental health, know that mental health matters for everyone. It is not isolated. Even our first responders can encounter some mental health challenges, people that we look at or identify as being our protectors. So I hope this list helps. Those are the 4. Well, I gave you 5. Therapist see therapist. Your therapist may have a history of trauma or another mental health condition. School did not necessarily prepare us for everything that enters into the therapy room. It's an experiential process and we won't know it and how to deal with it until it comes into our space. 4, countertransference is real with therapists. However, it needs to be regulated, boundaries set, and consultation or supervision around it. And then lastly, it is our job to show you and guide you through the healing process because you are already healed. You're already whole. It's just a matter of getting you to think and believe that to be true. So I hope that helps. I love being a therapist. I love the work that I do, but I can tell you, just as I said earlier, that the field chose me. And that's a whole nother fit chat. I hope you are doing well. Take care of yourself today. I pray that you honestly and wholeheartedly honor yourself on today in believing in what you were created to be, which is a whole person. God bless you. God loves you. Take care. Bye.